the day for this meeting. Appreciate you coming in. And what we're going to do is we have two bills, Senate Bill 548 and 549. We'll have the reviser go over them at first to explain them, and then we'll move into the testimony. And what we'll do is that we'll start with House Senate Bill 548. But if you want to testify on 549, at that time it'd be a good time. Just stay there, and we'll do 549 at the same time rather than shuffle back and forth and reset the clock. So that's kind of where the plan goes. We'll see how well it works.
How long will they be talking?
3 minutes each. They're going to do it all at the same time. If they do two, we can do 4 minutes if they have two bills to do. Okay. Got that? I want you to keep track of time there, John. Okay. Okay. All right, then. We will begin. Open the hearing on Senate Bill 548 and 549. We'll have the reviser summarize it for us first thing. Welcome, Tamara.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning, committee. So to begin with Senate Bill 548, current law provides that groundwater management districts may provide advice and assistance in the management of drainage problems, storage, groundwater recharge, surface water management, and all other appropriate matters of concern to the district. Senate Bill 548 would explicitly exclude matters relating to water rights from such advice and assistance that the groundwater management districts may provide. Additionally, current law allows groundwater management districts to recommend rules and regulations to the chief engineer that relate to the conservation and management of groundwater within the district. Senate Bill 548 would limit such recommendations to matters relating to irrigation, and Senate Bill 548 would take effect upon publication in the statute book. So I'm going to discuss Senate Bill 549.
Go ahead.
This bill would enact a new section of law that would allow a holder of a water right dedicated to a beneficial use other than irrigation to elect to withdraw from a groundwater management district. The water right holder would be allowed to withdraw if the point of diversion is located within the district and the authorized place of use is located wholly or partially within the district. A water right holder may withdraw from a GMD by providing written notice to the GMD Board of Directors prior to June 30th, and then the withdrawal would be effective the following January 1. Once a water right holder has withdrawn from a GMD, the water right holder shall not be subject to the following. First, water user charges, annual land assessments, any special assessments, or other taxes or fees levied by the district. Second, review by the Board of Directors of any matters related to the water right holder's right or rights. And finally, any rules and regulations specific to that groundwater management district. Senate Bill 549 would also take effect upon publication in the statute book. And I'll be happy to stand for questions at the appropriate time.
All right, thank you, Tamara. We'll hold questions until the end, make sure if we have time for them. So that's kind of the way we'll go. Thank you for your report. We appreciate that very much. So we're ready to begin. Let's begin with Senate Bill 548. But remember, as I said earlier, if you want to talk about 549, that'd be now is the time to do that too, unless we have time in the end to add extra time. But go ahead and do both of those if you have an interest in those, and we'll give you an extra minute if you do both of them. So we'll start off with the proponents, Kimberly Swati from Municipal Utilities. Welcome to the committee, Ms. Kimberly.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I appreciate the opportunity to be here before you this morning, and I will provide comments this morning on both Senate Bill 548 and 549 on behalf of Kansas Municipal Utilities. We are the statewide trade association of community-owned electric, natural gas, water, and wastewater utilities in Kansas. We're based in McPherson, Kansas, and the membership ranges in size from Kansas City, Kansas, to Wichita, which is our largest water utility, all the way down to communities the size of Isabel and Palmer with less than 100 meters. I did not have this map ready until this evening, but I'll give it to staff. And this is a listing of just the KMU member cities, just the KMU member cities, not all municipal utilities, or not all communities that are within the GMD boundaries in the state, the 5 GMDs. So I will provide that, and I apologize. for the delay. We had to make sure we were pulling the correct water right information. We do agree and support the overall statutory charge of the GMD districts to properly manage groundwater resources. I want to make that very clear. But we are concerned about the equitable representation allowed to municipal water suppliers in policy development and in governance of the groundwater resources within the district. Our organization has member water utilities within the boundaries of each GMD. We continue to monitor all of the discussions and governance issues within the district, and we have found that there is very limited potential for municipalities to participate in policymaking that can directly impact their municipal groundwater resource, and we have representatives that can further attest to that fact. KMU supports a strong discussion regarding municipal participation on GMD boards. We have municipal water systems that are entirely outside of GMDs. We have members that are entirely inside GMDs, and we have some that are half in and half out. So as you can imagine, our diverse experiences in and around groundwater management districts creates a real diverse set of opinions on how municipalities should exist and interact with those GMDs. Some cities get along absolutely just fine being fully embedded into their GMDs, but others have a more strained relationship when it comes to policies, particularly representation and assessment of the fees. One of the primary issues that municipal utilities have with GMDs is in the direct involvement in water rights. This legislation proposed in Senate Bill 548 would limit the role and involvement of groundwater management districts as it relates to water rights, and particularly as it would impact municipal water rights. Senate Bill 549 would actually provide the holders of non-irrigated water rights dedicated to a beneficial use with the option of withdrawing from the GMD if the water right holder determined that that was in their best interest. The Water Right Appropriation Act established that the water of Kansas belongs to the people of Kansas. And currently, there is a substantial difference in the governance between our member communities, whose rights are handled directly by the Division of Water Resources, and those communities whose rights are reviewed, and sometimes indefinitely, by the GMDs in which those communities exist. So we absolutely support the original mission of the GMDs, but the leadership structure of the boards offers little opportunity for municipal input, and the GMD board exerts, at times, undue influence on municipal water interests. So we strongly support Senate Bill 548 and/or 549 to provide clarification and/or remedy. So thank you for your consideration, and I will provide that map as well. Happy to stand for any questions at the appropriate time.
We'll take up questions when we have time at the end. Thank you. Next up, we have Don Henry, City of Wichita, via WebEx. Don, can you got a hold of us?
Yes, sir. Are you able to hear me?
A little louder yet. You're coming through, we just can't hear you yet.
Okay.
There you go.
Is that any better?
That's some better. That'll be fine.
Okay. Good morning, Chairman Kirshen, Vice Mayor Rickman, and Ranking Minority Member Ware. My name is Don Henry. I'm the Assistant Director of Public Works and Utilities for the City of Wichita, and I'm here representing the city in that capacity. The City of Wichita is the regional supplier of water in South Central Kansas. It's responsible for providing water to nearly 500,000 people, which includes residents of Wichita, 13 communities outside of Wichita, as well as a number of key industries, including McConnell Air Force Base. The city is the largest user of water in Groundwater Management District 2 and holds the largest water rights as an individual user. And of course, proper resource planning and management is essential to us, both as the largest city in Kansas and a key economic contributor in the state. The city appreciates the effort to bring forth Senate Bill 548 and fully supports its intent to provide exceptions to matters related to water rights from the advice and assistance such groundwater management districts may provide. As you're aware, GMD2s were authorized in 1972, with GMD2 being created in 1975. While the original intent of groundwater management districts was to protect groundwater quality and quantity, protect the natural resources, the economy, and the public interest at large, while giving local users a voice in groundwater management, Through the years, this has added a layer of complexity and bureaucracy that has evolved to be a challenge for the city of Wichita. One example of this is regarding the city's aquifer storage and recovery facility, a $220 million investment that allows us to treat water from the Little Arkansas River and inject it into the ground to provide future drought supply. Over the last few years, we've proposed improvements that would, or improvements to our operating permits, modifications that would allow us to better manage the aquifer, to protect the aquifer better, and to optimize our operations of that facility in such a way that it would be more cost effective. And GMD2 is a critical path towards approval by the state engineer for that process, and that's been held up for years. In addition, the annual reports that we're required to submit to the chief engineer to GMD2 that accounts for the recharge credits based upon the treatment of that water and the injection, approval of those reports have been held up by the GMD2 for a number of years. Getting new applications for new municipal water supply wells through the district have been a challenge. Sometimes that can take years and wind up just being denied by the GMD2, and then ultimately to have them approved by the state engineer with no basis for denial by the board other than that they were simply opposed to the city's applications. And, you know, broader concerns also include the fact that—
Don, 3 minutes is up. You want to talk about 549 a little too? Are you including them in your testimony?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We are including both of those bills.
Okay, give me another.
Fully support Senate Bill 549 as well. The intent to provide exception to matters related to, or I'm sorry, 549 to exempt municipalities from groundwater management districts. I'd like to say that the city of Wichita takes its responsibilities seriously, which includes ensuring enough water is available to support its residences, businesses, and industries. And to this end, Wichita has invested more than $220 million in ASR phases 1 and 2. We're currently investing more than $550 million in the Northwest Water Facility, a new state-of-the-art treatment plant, which provides us the ability to be more drought resilient and protect our raw water.
I'm going to have to break in, Don. I have cut short a little bit. We need to spare the time for the end here. So if there's time at the end, we can make some more remarks. So we're going to suspend it for now.
Okay, I'm sorry, sir.
Okay, no problem. Next up for proponents is Tom Dodry, City Manager Hayes. Welcome to the committee, Toby.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My comments are specific to 548 and 549. The cities of Hayes and Russell own a property in Edwards County, south of Kinsley, Kansas, that we are in the process of developing as a long-term regional water supply. The property is within the boundaries of Groundwater Management District number 5. The cities are not, the property is, which is the reason why I'm in front of you today. The first step in the process to develop a regional water supply is to change the water rights from irrigation to municipal. This is a process that is contained within the Department of Agriculture's Division of Water Resources headed by the chief engineer. It results in the issuance of a master order that governs all aspects of the water rights. One of the most important components of that master order is the consumptive use analysis that's completed. Consumptive use is put in place in order to make sure that the new use of the water doesn't consume any more water than the previous use, therefore further depleting the aquifer. Consumptive use calculations are put in place to protect adjacent water right owners. Consumptive use calculations are formulaic. They are laid out by county. They are widely utilized and widely accepted. During the negotiation process with the Division of Water Resources, Hayes and Russell were asked to consider sustainable use of the property, which means going above and beyond what consumptive use regulations would allow. After some back and forth, Hayes and Russell finally agreed to the extraordinary and quite frankly unprecedented concession of giving up 30% in excess of what we were allowed by consumptive use. We agreed to go 30% beyond that, and legally limit our available water to ensure sustainable usage of the property. We did this because we wanted to be good stewards of the property, because we wanted to be good neighbors, and we have no intention of using the property in an unsustainable manner. The Groundwater Management District Board, Groundwater Management District number 5, while exercising their voice in the process, they could have thanked Hayes and Russell for their commitment to sustainability. But rather they chose to act upon a recommendation by a group of irrigators and recommend to the chief engineer a 40% reduction in Hayes and Russell's available water rights. This is in an area where no impairment exists and no claim of impairment exists. We think the Groundwater Management District Board exhibited inconsistent standards in this recommendation. There are situations in the Groundwater Management District where clear impairment exists, and a 30% reduction by the junior water rights causing the impairment could solve the impairment claim. However, this is not being considered by the Groundwater Management District Board, let alone the 40% reduction they recommended with regard to City and Hayes' situation. Rather than put in place meaningful cuts to address the impairment issue, the Groundwater Management District Board is choosing to pursue an augmentation well field in order to artificially recharge a creek in order to provide water to a senior water right. From the public records that we have been able to gather, the well field that they are considering is roughly the same size as the City of Hayes and Russell property. However, that does not appear they're applying the same standards to that well field in order to maximize input. The board's actions have helped lead to a 4-year delay in the regulatory process and created a 60% increase due to recent project cost inflation, which will be borne by the residents of Hayes and Russell. As the city manager, I feel it's important that units of government apply the rules and regulations uniformly. And I feel all water rights in a groundwater management district should be treated equally. And so in our opinion, if non-irrigation water rights are going to be held to different standards, then the owners of those water rights should be able to be removed from the district, or the district's oversight should be limited. And I ask you to consider favorable passage of both bills, and I would stand for questions whenever the time comes. Thank you.
Very much, Toby. You did real well. And next up, we have written testimony, proponent testimony only was Eric Sartorius, Kansas League of Municipalities, John Quinde, City Manager of Russell. These are written only proponents. Tom Brown, Mayor of McPherson, Ty Lasher, City Manager of Bel Air, Jade Piros de Carvello, City of Hutchinson, and Kyle Magnus, City of Derby. Those were proponents for written only. Now we will move into opponent testimony.
Mr. Chairman, we have some on 549, it wasn't on 548.
Yeah, we can do that. Well, I don't have them on the list here. Are they here? Okay. Okay. Well, we had it for written. I got. We're talking about both of them at the same time, that when your presentations, and state that when you start, that then way we cover both of them, we can pick up the slack when we get. Okay. Okay. So, yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Apologize for any confusion. Joshua Swati on behalf of REAP. I'll make this very brief. One, there's a lot coming at you on a Monday morning. Where did this come from? There's a representation problem on the GMD boards, particularly for municipalities, but for all beneficial users outside of irrigators. That's where this is coming from. The GMDs will probably say, well, we could add 1 or 2 other municipal members onto those boards, but when that relationship is so broken, adding 1 or 2 members really doesn't fix the problem. That's where this is coming from. So then what do the 2 bills do? And I'll briefly in 30 seconds talk about 548. Advising and reviewing water rights does not change those outcomes at all. So all the GMDs are doing right now are slowing that process down. So 548 is an administrative fix. It says you can no longer advise and review. It just makes the process faster for everybody, not just municipalities, but irrigators, stock water. everybody would have a faster, more efficient process under 548. 549 simply says if you, as a groundwater management district, kind of want to behave as an irrigating district where all of your board members are irrigators, that's fine, but everybody else then can opt out of the district. That's what 549 would be saying. So those are the two different bills. We put two different options in front of you to solve the representation problem that we have, because it can't really be solved by adding one or two other different municipal members. It's bigger than that. It needs a different fix. So we've got two of them. One, you can no longer slow down the process of water rights change applications by advice and review, because that's what's getting slowed down right now, and it doesn't change the outcome again. That is a direct relationship between the water rights holder and the Division of Water Resource. So right now, it doesn't even change the outcome. It just takes away their process to slow it down. 549 says if you want to be an irrigation district, everybody else can opt out of it, so they're no longer subject to it, so they can't be slowed down by those other processes. Those are the two. We leave it up to your wisdom to decide which one might be the best. Thanks.
Thank you, Josh, very much. I think we got it straight out there. Mr. Brown, from Mayor of McPherson, welcome to the committee.
Thank you very much.
We're talking about 548.
548 and 549.
Okay, good.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Vice Chairman, Madam Ranking Minority. As Mayor of the City of McPherson, I had offered written testimony, now verbal testimony, in support of Senate Bill 548 and 549. The City of McPherson appreciates and supports the intent of Senate Bill 548 and Senate Bill 549 to address the issues of lack of fair and equitable representation of municipalities in the groundwater management districts, particularly Groundwater Management District 2. The current imbalance, discrepancy, and inability of municipalities to be fairly heard continue to be a serious concern for the City of McPherson. Over the years, McPherson has become an industrial powerhouse due to the competitive advantage, namely the extraordinary competitive and reliable electric utility, central location, and access to skilled labor in central Kansas. McPherson has been the fifth fastest growing industrial community in the United States, according to Forbes in 2018. During that time, the industrial use of water is an important thing. We've added 1,500 new jobs, and we've contributed $18.5 billion to the GDP. So water becomes important. And so we just need a more better process to approve what we want to do. And I want to add here, outside of my written testimony, that we are responsible water users. About 7 years ago, I entered into agreement with CHS, a refinery in McPherson, that we would provide gray water to them, and they invested almost $2 billion in a coker, which was great for Kansas. And in doing that, we are saving 1,400 acre-feet of water a year. So that makes us responsible. Also, when we've had expansion at Pfizer, which has been a key industrial person within the pandemic, and also Viga, a German company that has all of their operation for the Western Hemisphere out of McPherson. We use recycling of water. We use hydro formation at Viga, and we recycle all that back. So we're doing our best to do this. And as chairman of REAP, we represent over 35 municipalities, counties, institutions of higher education, and public thing. All of these are a water thing. The I-35 corridor is a megapolis from Texas all the way to Chicago. We are centered to be a growth of economic development for the nation. These things have to be dealt with. We can't be going through. We're willing to be a great partner. We would take whatever you feel is the best solution. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Appreciate your remarks. Committee, we will move on to opponent testimony now. And we'll begin with Tim Bass from EcoSped's Management District Number 2. Welcome to the committee, Tim.
Thank you, Senator Chairman Kirshen and members of the committee. I did want to introduce, first of all, my name is Tim Bays. I'm the manager of the Equus Beds Groundwater Management District in Halstead. Just passed my 30th year, so I used to have a lot more hair than I do now. I want to introduce one of my board members, David Stroberg. He's been on our board, I think, for around 20 years. I'm trying to remember. He also represents GMD 2 and 5 on the Kansas Water Authority. We stand in opposition to both Senate Bill 548 and 549. And I provided you some written testimony. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail. If I read it, it would take much longer than 3 minutes. But we are the easternmost groundwater management district and by far the most diverse. We have about 550,000 plus people that rely on the aquifer for drinking water. We got irrigation, stock watering, recreational uses. Again, we stand in opposition. We think both of these bills create two different uses of water classes, two classes that one would be treated differently than the other. The foundation of the Water Appropriation Act is that no one user type has priority over the other one. It's priority date. This really creates where irrigation would be covered under one set of rules and regulations. The others would be set under another set of rules and regulations. That makes management almost unattainable, or it probably does absolutely make water management unattainable. Again, I think both these bills try to do the same thing, make two different users, two different types of classes. It just is really not good policy. Been lots of accusations thrown at groundwater management districts this morning. I realize I only have 3 minutes. I want to address just a couple of those. One is the board representation issue. We've tried to solve this multiple times on my GMD board. First of all, I want to say everybody's open for election. If you're a water user or landowner, you're an eligible candidate. You can run for the board. So last night I spent some time looking at my past minutes of our annual meetings, and for the last 13 annual meetings, municipal has put forth candidates 6 of those 13 years. When the last municipal representative was not elected in 2020, lost by 3 votes. There were no municipal representation at our annual meeting, except for the person that was running. So yeah, we do value diverse boards, but it's also a two-way street. They have to show up and vote and put forth candidates. To that end, my board did pass last month, or last board meeting actually last week, a draft policy that would guarantee 2 municipal representations on our board. I've heard from Mr. Savati that doesn't solve the problem. Well, I think it's a start. Again, my board's taken no action to remove new GMD board members, to remove municipal representations. Just hasn't happened. Our elections just aren't very well attended. Someone could easily be elected if they would bring some people to vote for them. I also want to address this supposed delay of water permit applications, particularly the city of Wichita with the recharge project proposed permit modifications. GMD didn't take any action to delay that. There was a hearing process that occurred over about a 2-year period. I urge you to go read the hearing officer's recommended order on that the proposal should be dismissed. It did not meet statutory requirements, and she has totally recommended it be dismissed. We didn't cause that delay. There was a hearing process that occurred. So this notion that if the GMD goes away, we get the same outcome, that's not true. I believe wholeheartedly their permit proposals, modifications would have been approved without the GMD action. That's not animosity towards the city whatsoever. That was proper management of the aquifer. So again, I'll close. Actually, I'm talking about 549. Could I have one more minute, Dan, or not? I want to make sure we understand the GMD Act makes it very explicit that the reason for the GMDs are so that the water users have a say in their destiny on how that water is managed. It doesn't say that one user type gets that destiny. It's all the water users collectively. It takes all of us working together. There's this notion that we favor irrigation over other users. I disagree with that wholeheartedly. I help all types of users. Just help Mountain Ridge get 2 new wells. It took board action to do that because they needed waivers. My board did not like municipalities. We would not have recommended those waivers be granted. In fact, of the last, I think, dozen or so appeals my board has heard, only 2 of those have been irrigation. The rest have been municipal, industrial, some school districts, and they've all gotten waivers because they needed it, and we've shown that it wasn't going to hurt the aquifer. It took the staff to show the whiteboard that. So this notion that somehow we are against other users is just blatantly false, and I would stand for questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tim. Appreciate that. Up we have Craig Zwick from Big Bend Groundwater Management Number 5. Welcome to the committee, Craig.
Thank you very much for allowing me to speak. I represent GMD 5. We've been very active in studying water. We've got several projects going on. We are against both of these because we feel like some of our rights are being taken away from us. The taking the rights away of studying the above ground is not good, because you've got to understand through the studies what happens above ground with the flow of the water and what have you affects what goes on down below. All these numbers that you've been hearing before us are not always exactly right. I've only been on this district for 3 years, and I'll guarantee you I don't know lots yet that's going on. There is so many moving parts of everything. The studies take time to decide whether it's the right thing to do or not. You know, we've got studies going on that's been going on for several years, and we still don't have the answers that we need. In our district, we do ask the cities to be on. Most of them choose not to be. Our district is a lot different than some of them because we are so ag-backed that the cities understand what the irrigation and stuff does for us. We just feel like that this would be a bad move to pass these two bills. We think that there needs to be a lot more studies going on and things that we can work together to get everything to work better. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Craig. Next, we have Shannon Kenyon from Northwest Kansas Groundwater Management District Number 4. Welcome to the committee, Shannon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee members. I am Shannon Kenyon. I am the manager for the Groundwater Management District Number 4 in Colby, Kansas. I come before you today in opposition to 548 and 549. And the reason why is up in Northwest Kansas, we don't see this problem with any of our users as far as municipalities, stock water, or even industrial recreation. We seem to get along just fine with everybody and work with them. So these two bills, to me, seem to be more of a local problem and not a statewide problem. As we all know, that in most areas of the state of Kansas, it is over-appropriated. So in GMD4 in particular, we do manage our water resources. We have two LEMAs, the Sheridan 6 Local Enhanced Management Area, as well as the GMD4 Local Enhanced Management Area, where we do restrict users to extend the life of the aquifer. So if there are any exclusions, be it stock water, municipal, whatever, from our district, any kind of beneficial use, how can we manage that aquifer? We can't. So I'll stand for questions whenever it's appropriate.
Thank you very much, Shannon. Next, we'll have Kent Askren from Kansas Farm Bureau. Welcome to the committee, Kent.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am not Kent. Kent is out ill today, so you're stuck with me. I am John Donnelly here, testifying on behalf of Kansas Farm Bureau. You have Kent's written testimony in front of you, and those of you know that Kent's institutional knowledge on water policy is beyond compare, in my opinion. So I encourage you to read that more importantly than this listen to me. But I do feel like I can play the role of Mr. Swati for the opponents. So I'm going to give you an analogy. The issue that I heard the proponents say is they want representation. And that, I guess the analogy I would use is you have a bunch of toddlers in a playroom. One bill takes all the toys away so that they can get along. The other one takes all the kids away so that they can get along. That's not how you resolve the problem. You tell them to get along. GMDs and DWR need to get along. All water users need to figure out how to get along and work through these issues. These issues are complex. They're very complex in certain regions. They vary differently depending on the local source and supply. That is why we have the groundwater management districts. If you look back at the special committee, I believe it was an interim committee in the early 70s that created or began the discussion to create the groundwater management districts, it was those local problems that led us to the creation of the groundwater management districts. Do I think there are problems in the representation? There may be. I think those are best addressed at the local level. I guess I would assert at the end of the day, and this is on a lot of water issues, the statute is not the problem. It's the implementation of the statute and the different ways that people read that statute. At the end of the day, litigation occurs, and quite frankly, that's probably what's going to happen in this area of the law in the future. But I do not believe the statutes are the problem. So I guess I just summarize this. I believe they say the proponents of the bills say they want representation. So let's look towards ways to get that representation, and let's not pass bills that take the kids out of the playroom and take the toys out of the playroom. With that, I'll stand for questions.
We'll get some at the right time here. We're getting pretty close. Thank you very much, John. And by the way, I did talk to Kent the other night. He was anxious about coming in, so I'm telling him to get well. Tell him to get well. We wish him well. That's the main thing. So next we have as opponent Mark Root, Southwest Kansas Management District number 3. Welcome to committee, Mark.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Mark Root. I am Executive Director of the Southwest Kansas Groundwater Management District, office out of Garden City. And I will be brief. I've been told you can't be brief, Mark. You never are, but I will. Because most of what I was going to say and is in my written testimony has already been said. Both of these bills are a problem. They may fix something for some, but they create tremendous problems. And I've sort of articulated that with a little bit of history in my written testimony, particularly on the first bill, 548. To say a comment about 549, again, we are opposed to both of these because they're not helpful. What Mr. Askren / John Donnelly just said was very, very true, that we've got to have this collective local input from all of the water users, or we're just not going to be able to manage the resources. History has borne that out in Kansas, and the fixes and the policies and the statutes are good. I summarize it, I think, fairly well in that last paragraph of Senate Bill, my testimony on Senate Bill 548, just to point that out to you. The beneficial practices under Kansas water policy today continue to the extent, and I would add only to the extent, arguably, that people and water officials remain attentive to the cornerstones of Kansas water policy and remain well advised and assisted on all matters related to water rights and all water uses. 548 ignores what water stakeholders have learned in this state. It turns Kansas backwards away from local control and locally led solutions to water supply problems. Senate Bill 548 favors ill-advised water decisions and control by persons with special interests over other interests of all and the common good. The result would dismantle what a diverse group of water rights stakeholders in Kansas has built in good water policy. The proposed legislation would invite unnecessary litigation, including federal overreach, to fill the policy voids that would be created in federally delegated state police powers over Kansas water. That applies to both bills, and I will stand for questions at the appropriate time.
Thank you very much, Mark. Committee, looking at the written opponent testimony is from Bill Karp, a private citizen, Tessa Wendling, private citizen, Ruth Jacobs, private citizen too. Looking down the sheet here, I believe that's all the ones that we had online to talk. Is there anybody else here would like to testify as a proponent for this legislation? We have to ask. Anybody in the audience would like to testify as a proponent? Anybody would like to testify as an opponent? Additionally, to the ones we had. Anybody want to testify neutral? Okay, we got committee's left some time. We will open it up for some questions now. If the committee or someone else wants to make another point, we have a little time to do that. So we're being more efficient than I thought. So, Senator Francisco.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a question for Mr. Daugherty from Hayes. And I'm very interested if you could help us understand the delay. You were saying that there was a 4-year delay in the regulatory process. So my understanding is that you have to submit the request and the GMDs need to review it. How does that process work, or what do you think accounted for the delays?
Thank you, Senator. In this case, I don't want to give the committee the impression that the GMD board caused the delay. I think they were complicit in leading to the delay. The regulatory process has been quite lengthy. We started this process in 2015, and we're still not halfway through yet. So where I think the GMD board helped cause the delay is when they exercised their voice. If they would have exercised their voice in a way that said, we appreciate Hayes and Russell for not only following the regulations, but for going above and beyond the regulations, that might have ended it. However, because they adopted the recommendation of a group of irrigators to recommend further cuts, and I would like to explain a little bit regarding the agreement to go 30% beyond what's required by regulation. That was an agreement between the cities of Hayes and Russell and the Division of Water Resources. We feel like that by regulation, we have the legal right to whatever the consumptive use calculations state. We entered into an agreement with the Division of Water Resources and negotiated that to go further. That was between us, and quite frankly, it's not really anybody else's concern how far we go down. We feel that if the board would have stated that there was an appreciation the regulations were followed and concessions were given, then that wouldn't have empowered our opponents to pursue litigation because they wouldn't have felt like they had the backing of the board to pursue that. And so they might have rethought their strategy then from a legal perspective.
Senator McGinn.
My first question is for Tamara. On the statute of groundwater management districts, 82A 1028, I believe it is, I am trying to find, I see what they can do, adopt a seal, sue and be sued, all the wonderful things of being an entity. What I can't find for sure is on this recommendation that I'm hearing to the chief engineer, is it a must, shall, or a may? Where is that at?
So if you look at the very beginning of that statute, the first sentence says that every groundwater management district shall have the power to.
Okay, and then take me down to where it says recommend on all.
Yes, so they have the power to do that. They aren't necessarily required to do that.
They have the power, so how is power different from shall or may?
I would say it's more of a may.
It's more of a may, not a shall.
Correct.
Thank you. Okay. And then I have a question for Tim Bays. Welcome, Tim.
Morning, Senator.
You talked a little bit about that last election, and I heard, and you can tell me I'm wrong because I wasn't there, but I heard that many of the municipalities showed up to that last election.
Yeah, and I was referring to the 2020 when the city of Wichita representative did not get, I'm going to say reelected, although technically he wasn't elected the first time. He was appointed by my board for a retiring city employee. So in that case, he lost by 3 votes. I think he got 14, and the person that won got 17.
Yeah.
and there was no municipal representation in the audience. Now, the next election, there was a number, I think it was around 10 or so that did show up to vote, municipal representatives.
I think we decided 20 was COVID problems perhaps, but on this last one, you said there was about 10 representatives?
Yeah, I think so. I think I might have the number. Let me look here, Senator. Yeah, by my count, and it's not official, there was 11 municipal eligible voters that were at our meeting.
So my question is, trying to understand this, each municipality receives one vote, is that correct?
Yeah, and that's true for every entity. It's a one vote per entity. So yeah, for a municipality, if they have a water right, that's one vote. Same way with an irrigator, even if that irrigator, let's say, has 30 or 40 water rights, it's still just one vote. Then it's not a vote per water right, it's per entity, if that makes sense.
I want to be clear. So if I have land that's Mark and Carolyn, and then we have another piece of land that's just Carolyn, and then another piece of land that's Mark, and then another piece of land that's our sons, all in separate legal entities. Is that still just one vote?
Well, yeah, for using your example, for Carolyn and for Mark and Carolyn, that'd be one vote, because in Kansas, if you own land, your spouse owns it with you. I mean, now if it was in McGinn Inc., then yeah, that would be a separate one. Or if it was a son under a completely different name, then that would be a separate vote, yes.
So we can put it in different names under a different entity. So like maybe on one, well, I don't know if you could break this up, you'd get in trouble probably with the tax people, like a sole proprietor and one a corporation, but maybe more of an LLC or something like that.
Yeah, that would be separate votes in our interpretation. So because those would be separate entities, it's our policy, and I think the other GMDs could probably say the same thing. It's one vote per entity, per name, if you will, if that helps. So there is potential. I think most cities only have one, unless they have maybe a foundation or something like that, then they could have one, or maybe their parks is a separate entity where the parks could have a vote. I think I've got one or two like that, but so generally it's one vote per person, per entity. And there's a definition of person, which is what is described.
I saw that. That was interesting.
Right. Yeah, and maybe I thought maybe I could answer your question that you asked the reviser. The GMDs, at least for GMD2, and I think the other ones, have specific regulation through the Division of Water Resources that says we will review change applications, new applications, to submit our recommendations to the chief engineer. So that maybe was that step that from the statute to the practice, there's a regulation there that enacts that we have a regulation that's called application processing, and that's part of it. Chief engineer submits it once it's in complete form, then we review it, make a recommendation back to the chief engineer. If it doesn't meet our rules and regs, the applicant can appeal, which I think I mentioned in my testimony, can appeal and ask for an exception to that regulation.
Okay, thank you. And I may have another question, but I'll wait and hear from the committee.
Thank you.
Any other questions? John Dahl, Senator Dahl.
We all wish it wasn't Senator, but it's John Donnelly, please. So do I, actually. But this bill seems to be an ag versus municipalities bill. Would you agree with that statement?
Oh, I would say it's a beneficial user type bill. I mean, you've got 14 beneficial uses. This singles out only irrigation. On 549 it does. 548 includes everybody's water rights. 549 says only irrigators have to be in the groundwater management district.
Okay, can I follow up? With that in mind, it seems that the water division, water, because it's so critical for Kansas, we have so many entities. It seems like do they have, does that complicate things? I mean, do we have do they cross threads?
Meaning the governmental entities?
Water management versus water division versus this versus
yes, there's complexity in water law and in the the agencies that have a say in that. However, I think they all do serve a purpose. I can tell you, and I also practice law and in legal representation of water users. Irrigators can be as equally frustrated with groundwater management district regs. Stockwater users can be as equally frustrated. But there is a purpose, and it is a locally developed management plan that really only works if all of the water rights within that district, that local supply, are included. So yes, it's complex. There's no denying that, and there's frustration. I mean, there's no denying that as well.
Any other questions? Senator Francisco.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is probably also a question for the reviser. So the statute clearly says that within 90 days after receipt, of a change to proposal. Is there any similar requirement for the review of a groundwater district? Do they, if they're asked to review a water right, is there a limit to the time they can take?
I would need some time to follow up on that, but there might be someone who would be able to answer your question.
Anybody else want to tackle that? Mr. Swati, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. They also have a time constraint, but they also then can request extensions. And back to the central question of, is there tectonic plates fighting here? Yes, they request extensions all the time, and extensions upon extensions upon extensions. And those tend to be granted because all these entities are trying to work together. And so I don't want to speak for the Division of Water Resources, but I don't think they want to be in the position of finally pulling the trigger and saying, no, I'm sorry, you're done. This never really should have been your responsibility in the first place. We're going to stop doing this. They don't want to do that. But in the meantime, the groups that end up on the short end of the stick are those entities that have no seats at the table on these groundwater management district boards because of the structure of the voting system. Back to that central voting opportunity in the last GMD board meeting, municipal interests came and they tried, and the highest vote getter for municipal interests was 29, and the lowest vote getter of an irrigator was well above 100. And that was after people were even saying, hey, GMD2, it would be smart to put a municipal interest on your board. They all knew that going into the meeting, and they couldn't help themselves. So the municipal interests, industrial interests, developer interests, recreational interests are the ones that get these extended ad infinitum reviews because extensions were requested and granted.
Francisco.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There's one other thing that I probably should have done ahead of this meeting and did not, and that's I would be interested if research could give us some information about the bill that was proposed that dealt with water in the House and what its effect would have on the GMDs, because this is not the only conversation that the legislature is having about those groundwater districts. And I think it would help us to put these two bills in a context of what other proposals have been made.
Senator McGinn.
I think my question is a follow-up for Tamara. Talking about these extensions, if I wanted to apply for a water right or do something different, appoint a diversion or whatever, do I have to go through the GMD? Because I thought I heard you say May. Can I go straight to the Division of Water in Topeka without going through a GMD if my property's over the GMD?
Again, I would have to follow up on that, but there is probably somebody who knows a lot more about water in the audience that would be prepared to answer that.
Kenny wants to talk.
There you go. Welcome to the committee, Mr. Titus.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm just here to take arrows for the chief engineer today. My name is Kenny Titus. I serve as chief counsel. To answer your application question in a little broader sense, on new applications and change applications, there's a 150-day statutory limit that can be extended 30 days by regulation, which is acknowledged by the statute. So the maximum an application should sit is 180 days. However, I don't have any data with me, and I could not verify that that is the case, or that it wouldn't vary by region or complexity, but there is a 180-day limit in statute for applications. As to the review piece, as you noted, there's not explicit authority necessarily to review applications in the GMD Act. The GMDs that do review applications, I know 2 for sure, and at least 3 have regulations that allow for review. Those have a time limit with extension in them, but those regulations were implemented, so GMDs can't officially adopt their own regulations. They actually request the chief engineer adopt those regulations on their behalf to apply within their district boundaries. So previous chief engineers have granted specific authority to GMDs to review applications, which without that, I don't know that they would have that authority in that process. I know at least one GMD reviews applications under a memorandum of understanding, and I believe one has no regulation or memorandum.
I'm going to say it differently. I pick up the phone and call Earl Lewis. I want to point a diversion, or I want to find out if there's more water. Can I go straight to him, or do I have to go through the GMD?
You could start with GMD. In fact, they would usually not see it until we would fill out an application and complete it, and then it would go to them for review. So you could start with our field office or Earl or wherever you'd like to start.
Courtesy is a requirement, or the courtesy is because we have the statute that says they may?
We would, well, in the cases where we have regulations and agreements, we would follow the regulations, and then, yeah.
Senator Francisco.
So my understanding then is you start the request for a water right with the Division of Water Resources, but if the GMDs have adopted regulations that allow them to review, the Water Resources sends it to that GMD and awaits their review.
That's correct. I would just say there would be some cases where there are some of the GMD offices do help applicants put things together before they come to us, but that would sort of be their choice, and then it would come to DWR to be packaged, and then if it would go back for a formal review.
But just a follow-up, but if you're not in a GMD area, you go straight to the chief engineer.
That's correct.
What are we waiting for? Let's go to the chief engineer.
I can give you his phone number.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Any other questions, committee? Senator, begin.
To Tim Bays. Back to that one of carving out, would that have a substantial financial issue for you?
As far as if everybody but an irrigator could opt out of the district under 549?
Yeah, I guess.
549 would allow anybody that was a non-irrigator to withdraw from the district.
So what I'm thinking, what comes to my mind, northern Wichita, we got all the sand pit lakes. Is that what we're kind of talking about, or is there something else out there I'm not thinking of?
Well, in GMD2, about 50% of the water rights are owned by irrigation. I'm talking about authorized quantity, and about 50% are not. So you're talking about a potential of half of the authorized quantity could withdraw from the district under 549. Well, yeah, I mean, it's not just, I mean, we have huge industrial users, lots of municipal users that could all withdraw. Yeah, and you're right, the sand pits, I mean, that's an example. But yeah, about 50% of the authorized quantity is owned by irrigators and about 50% by everyone else. So it's about half and half. Was there any follow-up? I wonder, Senator, yeah, could I address perhaps the delay that was discussed? And I don't disagree with Mr. Savati. Sometimes we do ask for extensions to review applications. Sometimes the Division of Water Resources takes a long time to review applications. I'm not throwing arrows at anybody. These are complicated things. And a lot of times the applicant asks for extensions to get their information in. I'll use because we've talked so much about the city of Wichita, they're required to submit an accounting report every year. We have a couple that we need to get reviewed. I would agree 100% that. I'm not sure that they're in proper form yet. We're working on that. Their consultant asks for an extension every year to submit their report. I get it. They're complicated. They're 300 or 400 pages. I support their extension to make sure it gets done right. So it happens all the time. It's not just the GMD that asks for extensions. DWR takes a long time. The applicant takes a long time to get their information in. There's no purposely delay by GMD2. I just wanted to address that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Committee, we're out of time, actually, so I want to thank everybody that came today and took time to come and talk about the project we're working with here, and ask you to continue to work on it, because we went through 3 water plans this year, I mean, in House and the Senate, and we still don't have a water plan. So to deal with this, so I think we need to reflect on the years we had good relationships and stuff, and a lot of stuff where good things happened. But whatever rut we're in now, we need to get out of that. So that's what the purpose of these meetings are, and appreciate all the frank openness, and maybe we can come up with some suggestions before we go forward for next year, because we're about out of time this year. We got very few days left on the calendar to put anything in. So, but I don't want to hesitate anybody who has a substantial recommendation to come forward and see what we can come up with. So with that, committee, we are adjourned. Thank you.